OpenAI, ChatGPT's Canvas is worth a full update by itself. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to spend just a couple of minutes talking through what Canvas is, how we can use it, and why it's really changing the way we interact with AI in a pretty fundamental way. So that's what we're going to do. So what is Canvas? We're used to the traditional ChatGPT interface or whatever language model you use where you're working with a chat box. And so that only allows a back and forth conversation. Canvas promotes active collaboration, which is quite a bit different for doing things like editing and revision. So the collaborative approach to both writing things like articles or blog posts or writing software code is a bit different than what we're used to. So we're looking at two side-by-side windows. And so on the one side, we have a little more traditional, what we're used to, the back and forth, the article that we're working on, the blog post, the code. And on the other side now, the new piece is the ability to collaborate directly with the AI. In this new window, we have the ability to generate, edit, and refine that content collaboratively, which is quite a bit different, being able to pick and choose different pieces. And the cool thing is, like I mentioned, whether it's an article or code, is there's actually two specialized modes. So for most of us, normal people will live in the blog article side, but if you're a little more specialized, a little more technical, there's a separate editor for coding, which is really cool. And then, of course, there's history for looking at revisions and going back through if you don't like a change and kind of rolling some things back. So it's a big moment in chatbot interfaces, and I think we're probably underselling it, or we've gotten so used to all these breakthroughs that we don't realize how big of a moment it is, but this is a really big deal. Chatbots or chat boxes were always going to be a V1. They're fine, but in a lot of ways, they're not necessarily natural or intuitive. They don't collaborate. That's not how we collaborate with humans. Whenever we ask for feedback, we're asking for feedback on, what do you think about this title? Or is this block of code right? Or how's a way that I can make this paragraph better? That's how humans typically collaborate. We pick and choose aspects to get feedback on. And we also want even suggestions on maybe things we're not thinking about. And I think that's really where we're heading with Canvas. It is moving towards this agentic or agent-based model where it's making nuanced decisions on what to edit or what we might want to look at revising autonomously outside of the traditional constraints that we're used to in that chat box window. So here we're moving from AI assistance to AI collaboration, which I think is an important distinction and really where these were always going to evolve to. But the cool thing is we're seeing this. And this isn't the first time Anthropic's Claude with their artifacts had a version of this summer. But ChatGPT, OpenAI is the leader in the space. So we will see, I'm sure, everybody else Me Tooing this functionality very, very shortly. And the reason why is not just because ChatGPT is doing it, is because it's actually a better way to work and interact with an AI, getting to more of that collaborative space as opposed to just that assistant space. So it's a big deal. We're going to run through a couple of examples here. I think once you see what it can do, you'll be pretty blown away. But we'll run through that now and let me know what you think. With 4.0, we can drop in our design notes and ask it to make a blog post from our notes. And this is where Canvas is a little different than what we're used to. We can do things like ask it to suggest edits for us. We can tell it to modify the length. We can modify the reading level. Ask it to add final polish, or if we're doing something less formal, add an emoji. But in this case, we're saying, hey, suggest some edits for us. This is where it's being agentic, where it's an agent, and it's going through and suggesting things for us. But we can still do things like ask it to do things for us. So if we want to make the title more creative, we can do that. We still have full control, and we can go back and tweak it for ourselves. We can also do things like, hey, let's make this reading level more at a college level. And then if we're done with this, once we're finalized, we can say add some final polish. So I'm sure you can see from this really quick demo how you can quickly start collaborating as opposed to living in that chat box and editing back and forth. And I'm just going to talk over the coding demo so you can follow along in the background. But the very specific example that I want to use for this is I was just speaking at a university to some pharmacy students, and they are not necessarily software developers, they're not necessarily coders, but they need to be able to do some software development to develop drugs. And so one of the things that came up was the software they use, which is SAS, is relatively expensive, where R, another language, is not so expensive, but they didn't know how to write in either. So one of the really cool things is they could take SAS examples, drop into, in this case, ChatGPT, and tell it to convert it to R. And now with Canvas, you can collaboratively go through and troubleshoot some of those problems that you might run into, reasons why it's not necessarily running. And so, even if you're not a software developer, this coding interface is going to be really, really huge for you to go in, make modifications, make changes, and create a much better piece of software. Even if you're not somebody who normally can create software, now with AI, you're getting much closer to being able to do that. I know those demos were super fast, probably very hard to follow. I get that was somewhat intentional because I think the best way to learn this is to actually jump in to the software, start using it. It's relatively intuitive, but if you have any questions, drop a comment. I'd be more than happy to help run through what I'm doing. And we'll talk here in a few weeks, but until then, stay curious and keep learning.